Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session on institutional philanthropy supporting science, research and innovation. My name is Anya Sitharam and I'm your moderator for this session. My background is that I'm a former television journalist specializing in health and science. I now make documentaries about science, health and environment. I'm also a communications consultant and I also moderate panels, and I'm really pleased to be here today at the first European Research and Innovation Days. Very exciting. So, as the European Union plans its most ambitious research and innovation funding programme ever, we're going to be looking at the role of philanthropy in supporting the strategy. With a budget of 100 billion euros, Horizon Europe aims to strengthen EU science and technology, boost the EU's industrial competitiveness, and tackle global challenges that affect our daily lives. In addition to the bigger budget, Horizon Europe will adopt a new approach to partnerships that create a more enabling environment for foundations to collaborate. So why the growing interest in foundations? Well, an EU Commission report has found that foundations contribute 5 billion euros a year to research and innovation. And in 2012, a survey found that R&I foundations were estimated to have assets of 127 billion euros, so a not inconsiderable amount. So can the ambitions of the EU and research innovation foundations and the EU complement each other? What are the opportunities and challenges for closer working? These are some of the issues we're going to be discussing today, and to help me, we're very pleased to have representatives from 3 of Europe's biggest foundations with us to give their perspectives. We've got Angel Font, who's Corporate Director of Strategy and Research at La Casa Foundation. We've got Birgitta Nauntoft, CEO of Novo Nordisk Foundation. Jeremy Farrar, Director of the Wellcome Trust. And we've also got representatives of the Commission. I'm going to first invite Jean-Éric Paquet, Director General of DG Research and Innovation, to share his thoughts on the role philanthropy can play in the EU's future R&I strategy. Jean-Éric.
Well, Anya, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Dear panel members, thank you very much for having joined us here at the Research and Innovation Days and for, in a moment, sharing with us your views and, I hope, your ambition to team up amongst yourselves and with us to support, indeed, research and innovation in Europe to produce solutions for our societies. Solutions which very much are solutions which will be deployed in Europe, but which I think in many cases are also much broader solutions to the global challenges of our planet. Now, what I want to do very briefly is to give you the sense of the European Commission on how we hope to be able to team up with philanthropies, which is a very diverse set of actors, and I think the panel shows it already, how we hope to team up much more in the next cycle, under the next budget, but I think more in the next policy cycle, because this is not just about Horizon Europe. This is much more about the European effort on research and innovation, supporting outcomes in our societies. I'm saying much more because I think the first thing which I think we should all really take stock of is that there is already quite a lot happening. I mean, firstly, of course, foundations, philanthropies are delivering amazing results themselves. So I don't think I need to say it, but it's maybe good that I acknowledge it. I mean, yourselves, and sometimes working together, the results are very often spectacular. The flexibility which you have also in your own construct is often rather remarkable. And frankly, the resources on a yearly basis are probably not that different from the framework program if we take all of you together. So yourselves are key players, and we have over time, and this I think is certainly a decade old, tried, sometimes successfully, sometimes less, to already team up. Now, for Carlos Moedas, as you know, this was very much one of his added values as commissioner. He pushed us during these 5 years to see how we can better work together. And I think there are a few successes. I think health research is one particularly successful areas where, with the Wellcome Trust, also the Gates Foundation and a few other key actors, we were effectively able to come together and fund together research with very concrete, tangible outcomes. But from that ambition and that experience, what I think is quite clear is that the existing rules were not particularly helpful on our side. I think we acknowledged that. I mean, sometimes, of course, your own practices are a constraint then for us. But we have, and this was then part of the discussions and the preparation of both the financial rules of Europe, the financial regulation, and of course Horizon Europe. So you just said it, Anya, we now have an enabling framework. It is available. There is agreement also between institutions at EU level on that enabling framework. So the discussions during these 3 days, and I think in the panel, are not so much a discussion on ambition, willingness. It's a good discussion on let's do it and how do we do it. And so this is as much a discussion on rules, on model grant agreements, on audits, and on financing horizons, which can sometimes be challenging to reconcile. That is something which I think needs to be very, very seriously discussed early on. And during these research and innovation days, as you all know, we also have teams of the Commission which are those which are drawing up these rules. And that needs to take place. And it is already, as you will imagine, ongoing. And then I think it is, as we are doing with all other actors, and for me, philanthropies and foundations are a major actor of research and innovation in Europe. So as we are discussing with universities, research organizations, member states, it is how do we shape the program, and how do we shape it not just for you to be there, but how do we shape it to be together more ambitious on the outcome. So that is really, I think, what I think, expect from the panel, that you guide us on the priorities and that you explore with us, in as far as this is possible now in this short session, that you explore with us how best to make it happen. We are at a privileged moment where we have the framework in place, largely, but we have a bit of time to prepare properly. So this is why I think these research and innovation days, and again, thank you very much for being here in the panel, and for many other representatives from the philanthropy world to be in the room and engaging in the village with my colleagues, because there is really now ample time to prepare it properly and do it much more impactfully and ambitiously in this setup. Thank you very much.
Jean-Éric Paquet, thank you very much. A view from the Commission there. Now let's hear the perspective from a foundation. Ángel Font is Director of Strategy and Research at La Casa Banking Foundation. It's one of Spain's leading foundations and one of the biggest in the world in terms of expenditure. Ángel.
Thank you. Thank you, all of us, dear Director General, Deputy Director General, dear friends, dear colleagues. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I would like, first of all, to thank the European Commission for inviting me. As the Director General said, we are celebrating the launch of the Commission's 9th Research and Innovation Framework Program, Horizon Europe. It's a great opportunity, and without a doubt, is the most important research funding program in the world. This is a reason to be proud of Europe. This is a reason that to be proud of what we can achieve if we work together, if we join forces. And so I would like also to take the opportunity to congratulate also the Commission for the crucial role they play, but also all of us, the European research community, on our ability to pull together and make the difference. I would also like to thank the European Foundation Center for co-organizing this session and for trying to coordinate foundations. As I said, foundations are really diverse, and the EFC is doing a great job coordinating us. I was invited to speak on behalf of the European Research Foundation to pave the way of for a new framework of collaboration between the Commission and the European Philanthropy. It's a huge work to do. Let me say that I spent close to 30 years of my professional life linked to foundations, both in development, social, and scientific areas. And I know that it's not an easy task to speak on behalf of all of them, given the great diversity of our institutions. Nevertheless, I accept the challenge for two main reasons. The first is a sense of responsibility towards the other foundations. Currently, La Casa, in the person of my colleague Nacho Lopez, who is here in the first row, holds the chair of the Research Forum at European Foundation Center, a forum that provides European research foundations a platform to learn, to collaborate, and to advocate together. From this position, we have been privileged observers of the evolution in the relationship between foundations and the Commission. I believe these observations would be worth sharing. And secondly, it's a feeling of opportunity because we face great challenges in the coming years. Social inequalities, the burden of some diseases, the aging of the population, the climate change. We will need to work together in new ways, innovating on research funding schemes to address all these challenges. And this means different kinds of institutions need to sit around the table and overcome barriers to understanding. The fact that European foundations are here today at these days shows that we are ready to sit down at that table. I would like to talk a little bit about our role as a foundations. First, focusing on the essence of a foundation, and then reflecting on the opportunities that the future offers, that we think that there are big opportunities. But what exactly is a foundation? What we do, what we know about foundations? Essentially, I think every single foundation is the expression of the will of the society who supports it. Private initiatives for a common good. Private initiatives, but for a common good. Every foundation has their own history, their own identity, and sometimes that identities are not well known. Let me tell you a short story about that might shed some light, the origins of La Casa. It was at the beginning of the 20th century when class conflict was escalating across Europe. Workers marched against the terrible industrial working condition of the time. In 1902, the city of Barcelona was paralyzed by a 7-day strike against the 16-hour working day. Spanish authorities reacted with military force. 12 people died, dozens were injured. Francesc Moragas, our founder, convinced several Barcelona's non-profit private entities as business or cultural associations that were moved by these events to do something new. They look at the world of social science and the economics for solutions, and they created the Caixa de Pensions, essentially the country's first pension fund for workers. The fund was a success, and just 6 years later, in 1908, it inspired the Spain's first state public pension fund for workers. 30 years later, La Caixa decided to use surplus from this fund to create the first research center on tuberculosis, a disease that especially affects the working class. This story is not so different to those of other philanthropic institutions all over Europe. Every institution has its own. This is ours. And this story connects with our program today. Some of them, they are very old, like Compagnia San Paolo that was born in Torino in the 16th century. Others have been founded in the recent years. They are often born as a private initiatives in a particular field, whether it could be in social services, healthcare, education, others. Each has a drive to work for a common good, expressing the dynamism of the society around us. Whether we see the single story, we already see some of the defining characteristics of a foundation. Let me say at least 4. First is anticipation, the capacity to see changes before than others. The second could be flexibility, or the ability to adapt to different situations. The third, and is really, I appreciate that it's really strong in all of our institutions, is the independence of any kind of power or institution. And the last one could be said as subsidiarity. That is, we are not competing with public or private institutions. We are trying to be complementary from the public initiatives. To develop a successful framework of collaboration between the Commission and the Foundation, these 4 characteristics, these 4 strengths, let's say, has to be taken into account. Foundations, charities, social investors, organizations in the philanthropy landscape are diverse in size, focus, and regional scope. Many foundations have invested enormous amounts of resources, especially talent and technical capacity in research and innovation, and scientific impact has been gigantic. A good example is the Rockefeller Foundation's decision in 1915 to concentrate half of its budget, let's say half of the budget. I am not sure if we can take a risky decision like that, but they decided to use half of the budget on its yellow fever programs. This led to the development of a successful yellow fever vaccine and the development of a first-class network of research laboratories. And more recently, we can look at Wellcome Trust support to the Human Genome Project, which was essentially important because of these science policy contributions. Wellcome ensured that research released all genomic data quickly as the project went along. This was an open science forward-looking move that has lasting legacy in science. Foundations has a long tradition in investing in research and innovation. Of course, but what about the collaboration that we have had in the last period in the Horizon 2020? Foundations support the Commission ambitions of excellent research and innovation with transformative impact. We have already worked developing, for instance, joint programs as has had Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Wellcome Trust or Gulbenkian has had this time of frameworks. Our organization, La Casa, is core partners of IIT Health and receive also co-funding from Marie Curie Actions. And Compañía San Paulo participates in the Seal of Excellence scheme, just to give some examples. But with approximately 1,000 foundations working in research and innovation in Europe, investing 5 billion euros every year, one can imagine a more effective collaboration structure to improve the impact of each other. A working group of foundation was set up to improve the collaboration, a group that met Commissioner Moedas in October 2017, and the group is working and highlighted that the Commission can cooperate with foundations. As said, all these thoughts appeared in the documents of the new framework. I would like to draw on the findings of these initiatives and end by mentioning a number of key points to ensure the future of the working relationship between foundations and Commission. Both initiatives did identify a number of barriers that has to be removed for further collaboration. The first, we have to call it a specific recognition for foundations. It was said, as if we want to be potential partners, we have to be recognized at that. And the new, in the Horizon Europe new approach specifically mentioned philanthropy as a potential partner. That is a good step forward. A second point is about the nature of the philanthropy. Like the partnership, the collaboration. Can be at project level or co-funding schemes, as has happened in the past. But the next step has to be more systematic. Strategic co-creation based partnerships will ensure greater impact. We have to co-create together the programs. Normally, some people talk about the PPP scheme, public-private partnership. I would like that we can add a fourth P to the scheme and talk about PPP, maybe. The fourth P is philanthropy. Philanthropy is the most natural interaction space between the public and the private sector. It should be that way. As EFC Research Forum has pointed, co-creation involves all partners defining rationale, objectives, and expected results from the very beginning. This is what we call it by co-creation program. So the idea is let's move from co-funding to co-create and co-design programs. This should be the rationale for the coming period. Finally, I'm going to end. Foundations have a lot to bring to the table. And let me mention just 4 concrete areas. We have very detailed knowledge and a close connection at local level. Every foundation has born in a local-based society. This knowledge can be a great help for spreading excellence into local or regional ecosystems. For instance, foundations in Spain and Portugal are working together to promote a more powerful Iberian scientific system. In a recent statement, the science minister of both countries, Spain and Portugal, said, Iberia needs more Europe, and Europe needs more Iberia. The same goes with other regional dynamics. Second, foundations can offer insights to innovative ways of granting. We can experiment talking about high-risk, high-reward granting, or, for instance, opening peer reviews to non-academic partners. Thirdly, our innovative experience from foundations can be found in the field of fostering innovation through blended funding or venture philanthropy. That fields fits very well on the foundation side. And there is a whole space for collaboration in the development of research policy too, which will be discussed in one of the tomorrow's sessions. From the open science to public engagement with research, the experiences of foundations are really significant. So let's continue working towards a European community of researchers and innovators that pulls together and makes the difference. So let's continue working closely, Commission and foundations. Thank you very much.
Angel Font, thank you very much. And perhaps you will be credited with inventing a new acronym today, PPPP. So the 4 Ps. I'd also like to welcome, before we continue our conversation, Patrick Child from the European Commission, Deputy Director General from DG Research and Innovation, and he's going to be sharing the Commission's views on this conversation. Birgitte, you've been listening to both those conversations there, those speeches there, and what struck me, some of the things was the fact that there are many foundations, there are 1,000 foundations, they're very diverse, they've been described as private ventures, so there are a lot of differences there. And they also have their own governance, they have their own regulations. That being said, what do you see as the synergies, and what stood out for you in those speeches?
Yeah, thank you, Anya, and thank you, Angel, for a wonderful introduction on behalf of the foundations. I think I would like to focus on the opportunities, because I think we do have a lot of wonderful opportunities as foundations, in connection with collaboration with the European Commission. But I also think we should just thank you the Commission for inviting us all here, and thanks the EFC for taking the initiative. It's highly appreciated. Now, I come from a Danish independent foundation, and it's not just an independent foundation, it's also a foundation with corporate interest. That means that we earn our money by owning companies. The influx of money we get from our investments are increasing, and that means that our importance for society is increasing as well. We had last year a granting activity of around 800 million euros and a payout of about 1/4 of that. And a payout is the cash flow that is going into the Danish society. The plan in my foundation is that during the coming 5 years, we will increase the cash flow, the money that will be spent in a given year. We will increase that cash flow to our country 4 times. That is that in 5 years from now, it will be at least 800 million euros in Denmark. The center of gravity is Denmark, but we also support research, in particularly within life science in the Scandinavian region, or Nordic region as well. But we also encourage collaboration across borders. And that means that every time we give grants to a Danish research group, or Swedish, Norwegian, or Finnish group, we will encourage them to collaborate with people outside their home country. That's part of the granting activities. For now, we have been granting more than 14,000 projects over the last couple of years. Some of the projects got really big grants, maybe lasting 10 or 15 years. Others only got 1 year granting period. So I would like to start my little comment here with summarizing the opportunities. And I have 3 key messages that I could put on the table. The first one is, of course, the new research and innovation program, Horizon Europe. I consider that as a huge leap in the right direction for our region. The focus and the budget is impressive, and the newly established European Innovation Council is, in my opinion, novel and very, very timely. Secondly, I warmly welcome the closer collaboration between the stakeholders building up to the research and innovation ecosystems. The European Commission is a natural anchor and facilitator of such an effort. And merely, I of course welcome the establishment of a new forum, just like Angel told us about here, a new forum for dialogue and exchange of information, knowledge, experiences, and policies as well, between the foundations and the Commission. And we could call such an activity, I heard the word learning lab would be fine. It could also be a forum or platform or whatever. But I think there's a great need for that if we want to harvest synergy between our activities. Topics on the agenda for such a collaboration could, in my opinion, include research and innovation ecosystems. How do we support that best? Another topic which I think could be really important is impact assessment. So we could all agree on the principles and methods we want to use, because we all have the same problem, that citizens should recognize the importance of science. And how can the citizens and the politicians recognize this without having a decent frame to look into? So we have to use the same language and maybe methods and principles in order to see the good effects of the scientific investments. I also see talent development as a key issue that could be on the table in this forum or learning lab. And of course, creating public awareness and engagement in research. All very important issues for me. Now, thirdly, I would say that many of the topics and the ambitions of Horizon Europe are already heavily supported by the philanthropic activities of the private foundations. That means that, of course, we think that this framework for the time to come is fantastic. The indirect support of the framework of the Commission will happen. So you have us on the back seat. We are there to help you. And the positive news I can give is also that the trend nowadays is that the foundations are increasingly raising their granting activities. And we expect that the foundations, also in the future, will become an even more important supporter of European research and innovation. So I can say from my behalf that I really look forward to collaborating much more closely with you.
Great.
Thank you, Birgitte. Lots of ideas there and opportunities, and I'd like to discuss your learning lab in a bit. I'd like to bring in Jeremy Farrar from the Wellcome Trust now. I just want to ask you just a question, perhaps to reflect on what you've heard, but also just to tell me what makes foundations such effective drivers of research and innovation.
Thanks very much. And also to thank the Commission for continuing to invite people with a British accent. It's very much appreciated. And if we can get through the next half an hour or something without mentioning the B word, I'd be really delighted. But Wellcome is a European foundation. I'd just like to start with that statement. And although we were set up by an American and our home is in London, we have recently opened an office in Germany and wish to be considered very much part of the European family. I'd also like to praise the European Commission. We've worked, as many others have, over the last few years, and you can never single out a single individual, but I think what Carlos has done in terms of ensuring there was a equal and trusted and respected partnership between the Commission and foundations, and indeed ensuring that that is now enshrined in law. There's a legal framework now, I think is a huge, huge advance, and I think we all wish Carlos very well in the next phase of his career, but I think he's done a fantastic job whilst he's been in Brussels. Many people have mentioned it, but I'd just like to reiterate, foundations can never do what governments can do. They can never do what the Commission does. The honest truth is, although it's wonderful to hear the expansion of the Nova Foundation, the truth is we will never be at that scale. So the foundations have to ask ourselves, what is it that we have that is unique is a big word, but what is it that's different about us that allows us to contribute in a way that isn't just about the scale one is at, but to use what we have in a more imaginative way than sometimes governments and commissions can do. Because we should not, we cannot, and we don't want to compete in terms of scale. It's what can we do that is different. Independence is also a very big word, and we at Wellcome are independent. We are independent government, we're independent of business, we're independent of any political oversight, but we are regulated. But we should also not take that independence too far. Partnerships are absolutely critical, and partnerships with the 4 Ps, and you heard it first here, the 4 Ps are actually absolutely critical if we, selfishly, want to achieve the impact in society that we want to have, because our scale is not sufficient to make that difference. So independence must be protected, but let's not take independence to the level that we are therefore playing on our own, because that won't achieve the scale up and the impact that we want for society. We have to be flexible. I think many foundations, of which there's wonderful coming back to, I think, the 15th or 16th century in the audience. We're not so old, 85 years old, but we can take a long-term view, and that's critical. And we can take on things, again, that governments and commissions can't do, and we should be willing to use our freedom and our independence to take risks that government can't do. And I think foundations should challenge themselves more to be seen as edgy organizations that do stuff that others may feel a little bit uncomfortable in, because otherwise there is no point having the independence. If you don't do that, then I think as a foundation, you might as well just contribute and get the economies of scale by just contributing your funding to the government through taxpaying. The independence gives us an accountability and a responsibility to use our funds differently, and I think foundations should challenge themselves to do that in a different way. I also think, and just... There's one person clapping.
And I will do it.
Just to finish off, all partnerships are difficult, from romantic ones to organizational ones. And again, an experience the last 4 or 5 years working with the Commission, just because when you start out in a partnership, you hit some bumps on the road and tears before bedtime, keep going, because actually, certainly we have found the Commission to be more flexible than we dared hope, being willing to do things, I'm sure, which are legal, but perhaps are a little bit around the edges. And don't, when you're working in partnership with others, including our partnerships with other foundations, think that it'll be easy at the start. But when you hit those bumps, just go back to the original reasons you set the partnership up in the first place and have the idealism that you can actually make the world a better place, because you can, particularly if you work in partnership. And from foundations, I think that requires a degree of humility that sometimes some of us have not necessarily always had.
I just want to come back to you on what you said. So can you give a potential example of a project, this is completely hypothetical, that you could work with the European Union on, and you would take the risk? You say you're the risk takers. Would you need to drop your edginess in order to collaborate with them, or you're prepared to take the risk? What kind of area would you take the risk?
Well, I think a very concrete example of that over the last 5 years, and obviously it's very live at the moment as well, is around Ebola. We worked a lot behind the scenes with the European Commission about how to ensure that the science, the innovation, reached the society where it was critical to reach. That was in Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia in 2014, and now in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we were very clear with the Commission what the Commission could do, which was at a scale that we could not in terms of resources, but we could move quicker. And we could catalyze and stimulate and seed monies that would allow things to happen quickly, which the Commission was then able to come in and contribute to within a time frame more consistent with its own regulations, which we must respect. That partnership of the speed and edginess that we can work in, but knowing that there was a great partner to work with, was an example which I don't think we would have achieved the same if we'd done those as two separate entities. Okay,
thank you. Patrick Child, is it just the big foundations that are relevant to this?
No, not at all. If we're setting up a new, and we hope more sort of robust legal framework for this sort of partnership, we want to work with all foundations that can make a potential contribution. So no, we certainly don't want it just to be a conversation with a few big hitters. We really want to tap into the sector across the board and do what we can with all profiles and all sizes.
Okay, and I suppose some people might also be thinking, well, foundations with this huge amount of money, is it a way of boosting funds?
Well, I think as we've heard, it's not, firstly, we've also got quite a lot of money, and if the European Parliament and the Member States agree to our proposals for Horizon Europe, we'll have more money in future than we've had before. But it's I think, as I think Jeremy has explained it extremely well, it's about sort of working to our respective strengths, finding ways of doing things that we're good at, but also using the extra flexibility, perhaps the risk capacity, the different networks, the insertion into a society in ways that, as a public authority, it's not always straightforward for us to do, so it's not really only about money. Of course, if we can make effective use of our collective resources, if we're not falling over each other, duplicating what we're doing, that's great news, and we deserve that to our taxpayers. But it's much more for me about sort of working for our respective strengths as organizations and really maximizing our input through this new form of partnership.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted your reaction, perhaps from all the speakers, to this idea of some kind of new platform, perhaps a learning lab, to facilitate discussion and working together.
Yeah, I think we certainly do need to find a framework, a structure, a way of working together so that we have a sort of an organized basis for our conversations. Sometimes the European institutions, seized with a good idea, embrace it with such heavy bureaucracy as to sort of, remove any sort of operational purpose. So I hope that we can actually find a way of doing it in a light and pragmatic way. For example, we mentioned a moment ago, I think it was Birgitta who mentioned the European Innovation Council. Now we have a forum associated with the European Innovation Council, and maybe that's a way that we could also channel some conversations on that dimension. So yes, we need a framework, but let's keep it light and pragmatic.
Okay. Angel Font, I'm just wondering how you're reacting to some of the messages that have been coming out there. We've heard a lot about opportunities, but you yourself were stressing the differences between the foundations. How do you think we should overcome the barriers?
I think the way we are working is the right way, trying to have a more effective dialogue between the parts, because without talking, also this meeting today is part of this process, because we have to talk about what we are, what we need, what we look for. And so this is the point. And this framework, or structural framework, probably have to see in the coming weeks or months a document that can be shared by the foundations, and we can add some comments or something like that. So the way is that. The first big step in the new framework, it is a clear recognition for foundations. And I think the other opportunity, or the other step forward, is really to realize who is who in this relationship. And let me raise again a concept that Jeremy said, that for me is something that touched me a lot, that is working as a catalyst. I remember 40 years ago when I studied chemistry, that catalysis is really one of the most amazing processes. You have two reactives you put together, and they don't react with each other, and you put a surface, or you put some product, and they start working. This is what philanthropy should be. We cannot compare with all the amount of money that we use what the governments at local level, the Commission at European level can do, and we cannot compare all, for instance, in the private sector, all the investment that they can do when they receive good ideas that could be practical to put it at the service of the society. But what we can do is try that this reaction will function. This is the way that we have to build together that kind of programs. And to not to go to this kind of images, but going to the reality, that means to set up places that every foundation, big or not so big, can afford. I have that idea, I can apply for that, I can discuss with that person how to put it into work. We can use our resources on that, you can use yours on that, and let's work. This is the only way, or one way that can make the things go forward.
Thank you. Birgitte, we've heard about sort of talking about together, but how can sort of researchers and scientists out there access this new collaboration? What do you think would be the way forward there?
No, that's a difficult question. First of all, I think we have to realize, as Angel said, that we are a catalyst. Mm-hmm. We are catalyzing processes. We are not making our own projects. We are making projects together with partners. And we are not a substitute of the governmental support of research, neither of the support of the EU. So we are in between. I think what we can offer is that we can do things in a more agile way than the establishment can do it. And what do I mean with the establishment? Of course, I mean the governmental funding methods, or the funding methods that you use here in the EU. So we will be able to act more agile. We can offer the scientists that we can support their research to get proof of concept, so they can be well equipped to raise money from other parties as well. So the important thing for us is to be the supplement and not the substitute. And I would guess that if we went into collaboration with for example, the Commission here, on special issues in the new Horizon Europe, then we could catalyze a development that you probably couldn't do yourself. So I think we have something to offer when it comes to the close contact with the researchers that you do not have as of today. So we could bring something into the table here.
Yes, as you've got the contact on the ground, the local knowledge,
Yes,
which perhaps the
yes.
Commission doesn't have. In terms of research and innovation, what kind of areas would be up for grabs? Where do you think you could help?
When it comes to research, the focus of my foundation is almost the same as Jeremy's. It's the health issue, life science, and so on. But we do also spend a lot of money on innovation because we think that if we are supposed to have a well-functioning society, also in the future, we need to develop more companies. And we are supporting startup companies. And we're supporting them with grants. It's not just for the research they're doing, but we are also giving them finances in the process of establishing the companies. And we have been, right now, the Novo Nordisk Foundation has been accepted by our government that we have built the first incubator that is charitable. And here the companies can come in. They are not only offered money, but they are also offered mentorship, learnings about regulations, how to make a business plan, and so on. And we will even facilitate bringing in investors when they are in the process of being recognized to be a good commercial investment. So we will facilitate the very early step where you take the research from the universities into the incubator, make proof of concept, and go for the commercial potential, develop the process, and then we will even help funding in the next phase. I think we might be able to give some experiences to the EU when it comes to the new research or the Council for Innovation. I think the experiences we have had, we've worked in this field for more than 12 years. Yeah. And I would be happy to share.
Okay.
So,
no, I mean, if I could just add, I mean, I think that the successful experiences we had, in global health and the Ebola thing, I mean, have been very much focused in the health sector. I mean, we now have a new commission coming along. We have the president-elect talking a lot about this Green Deal, ranging from all dimensions of climate change, sustainability, industrial policy, artificial intelligence. I mean, these are all areas where we can potentially, I think, expand our cooperation. And I'd also draw attention to the specific mission areas that have been identified within the Horizon Europe program. I mean, things like clean and smart cities, climate change adaptation, cancer, which of course comes back to the health area, soil, the healthy oceans. All these areas, I think that now we've got a much clearer and more solid legal basis to work. I think we can learn from the successful experiences that we've had in the health sector, but I hope quickly generalize that across the piece into some of these emerging and very strong priority areas in our future research agenda.
Jeremy Farrar, do you think the idea that there are missions now makes it more difficult or easier for the Wellcome Trust to collaborate in terms of your priorities?
I don't think it makes it more difficult or easier. I can see great value in organisations, and we've done the same recently, actually being really clear, transparent and articulate about what you stand for and what you're trying to achieve. I think transparency and accountability is critical to foundations. It's what I hope gives us the trust on which we base things. And I think that comes with that is openness, transparency, and being clarity about what you're trying to achieve, whether it's funding discovery science or it's innovation or it's working in society. I think it's really important that we and the Commission, and I would applaud the focus that it's given, and I would hope, whether it's to school children, people in neglected areas of Europe, the rest of the world, that it also inspires the next generation of people to think what science can do to make the world a better place. And sometimes you do need those missions that go to the moon moment that says, we can achieve this. because we're living in a world which is a little bit cynical and is politically all over the place. And I think Europe also stands for something else, and that's a set of values and a social contract and multilateralism. And those are the things that are at the heart of what we would like to do with the Commission. It's great to see Dr. Sumir here from the World Health Organization and making a commitment to multilateralism at a time when it's under threat is also something that I think we should work together on in the future, because none of these challenges, from climate change to drug resistance to inequality, intergenerational challenges, are going to be solved by one country on their own.
Thank you. So the language now, Patrick, is co-creation, not just co-funding. So what is the difference? Is it about foundations influencing you?
Yeah, I think it starts with, as we are now, sort of quite significantly redesigning the way that we work in partnerships in general. One big part of the conversation that we're having with the stakeholder community is, using this new legal setup, what is the most effective way that we can work together in these new partnerships? And partnership means partnership, just as other things mean other things. I'm not allowed to use that word. Brexit means Brexit. Partnership means partnership. That means that we work as partners. It doesn't mean that we, the Commission, say, well, this is what we think a partnership should look like. Are you willing to be a partner with us on these terms? And I think that that's the first part of this conversation that we'd really like to engage with you on, is, how do we make this new simplified landscape for partnership really bring value added, and not just an opportunity for us from the EU to be giving money to a sort of self-selected group of natural partners. And I'm really hopeful that the conversation that indeed Commissioner Carlos Moedas has driven very, very strongly during his mandate with all of you will help us to make a really exciting new dimension in our partnership landscape.
Well, that beautifully segues into my final questions, really, to all of you. What concrete next step do you think you can take to deepen the partnership? I'll start with you, Jeremy, and I'll go down the line.
I think, I hate to be boring about these things, but having a legal framework makes an enormous difference. It allows not just, I hate to say it, but the leaders, but the whole organization to facilitate things to happen. And I think setting in place a legal framework sounds dull, but it's critical. And the second one, I think, is to turn the informality of some of the discussions that we've had over the last few years into a forum which allows a formal construct between the foundations and the Commission. That's the two things I would.
Thank you. Birgit?
I would love very much to applaud. These are actually the two main suggestions I would have as well. We certainly need the forum. I said that in the beginning. And I think the legal framework is absolutely necessary if we want to partner up. And we do want to do that, so we need the legal framework. But we also need the platform or forum or learning lab or whatever, where we can communicate and learn and exchange.
Okay, thank you very much. Angel?
No, I think strongly supporting the ideas that have been raised, but maybe for me, the evolution from this co-funding scheme to the co-creation one is just to also realize that we are not talking just about money, that is co-funding issue. Of course, always money allows us to do things, but it's realizing that inside the philanthropic world exists a big number of good professionals, of technical capacities. They can design new programs, they can design new experiments, as well as in the Commission. So talking about not co-funding, that is just what amount of money you put or I put, is how we can do it. And this is not a problem, a question for me of the mutual influence, that it's good to have influence from others, but to really put all the strengths that we have. And a philanthropic institution, of course, is money. It's one of the main strengths. But for me, and more important, is that technical capacity, that commitment of people that can try to find new solutions for the challenges that we face. This is, for me, the evolution, and the next step has to be in that direction.
So, Patrick, there's a lot of willingness here with the foundations. What do you think is, from the Commission's point of view, is the next step, next concrete step?
Well, I'm really encouraged by this conversation, and I think indeed that if we can find a sort of platform for engagement where we can have the conversations about sort of policy direction and our objectives and where we have common sort of goals, that would be great. I think that if we can then also use that platform to think about, well, how is this cooperation going to develop in practice? So moving from coordinated action to genuine joint calls, joint actions. Whether we can make better advantage, someone mentioned earlier the seal of excellence. So this is the idea that if we've judged a project to be, sort of really, really good and meeting all the criteria that we've set up, and we've done all the bureaucracy of evaluating it, but we can't quite fund it because we haven't got enough money. But then there are other organizations, including foundations, who might be interested in picking that up. That's another thing I think we can perhaps work on. And there's also the whole area of prizes, where actually if we can sort of join forces with foundations, we can add the sort of credibility and sort of authority of our respective organizations, we as a public authority, but then with the philanthropic goals and independence of the foundations, really coming together in a very attractive package. So I think those would be the three areas that, beyond deepening our policy agenda together, which I absolutely agree with Angèle we should do, which I would suggest should be our sort of work plan for the coming months.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I thank all our speakers, I just want to say that we do have another panel this afternoon about philanthropy, and it's about innovative approaches to policy co-creation, and that's at 4:15, room 9, Mendel, which is on the first floor, so I hope some of you can join us there. But I'd just like to thank the panel for their really, really exciting ideas and this positive discussion. So thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.